Pretend I am arresting you." The immigration officer whispered into my ear, his grip on my arm surprisingly gentle despite the aggression in his stance. "Keep your head down and do not say a word." I thought he was joking a sick prank to play on a 70-year-old man at O'Hare International Airport. But then I saw his eyes. They were not laughing. They were terrified. "Please," he hissed, tightening the handcuffs around my wrists, just loose enough to be comfortable but tight enough to look real. "There is no time. Just play along if you want to live." 20 minutes later, I would be sitting in a cold interrogation room looking at a one-way ticket to a Mexican border town and a bag of white powder that my own son had packed in my suitcase. But before I tell you how I went from a retired grandfather to a man declared dead by his own family, tell me where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever trusted someone who turned out to be your worst enemy. My name is Gerald Patton. For 40 years, I worked as a senior risk auditor for one of the largest insurance firms in Chicago. My job was to look at numbers spreadsheets and corporate structures to find the ROT hidden beneath the surface. I could spot a fraudulent claim from a mile away. I could look at a CEO and tell if he was skimming off the top just by the way he signed a check. I built a career, a reputation, and a fortune on being the man who saw what others missed. But the cruelest joke of my life is that while I was busy protecting billion-dollar companies from fraud, I failed to audit the two people sitting at my own dinner table. It had been 6 months since my wife Eleanor passed away from a sudden stroke. Since then, my world had turned gray. The silence in our large suburban home was deafening. I was drowning in grief, barely eating, barely sleeping. That was when my son Bradley stepped in. Bradley, my only child. The boy I had taught to ride a bike, the young man I had put through private school and university, despite his mediocre grades and lack of ambition. He had always been soft, a bit aimless, drifting from one failed business venture to another, but I loved him. He was my flesh and blood. When he suggested a father-son trip to a resort in Mexico to help me heal, I wept with gratitude. I thought he finally understood the value of family. I thought he wanted to reconnect. I was wrong. He did not want to reconnect. He wanted to disconnect me from my life. The morning of the flight, the air at O'Hare International Airport was thick with the smell of floor wax and stale coffee. The terminal was chaos, a sea of travelers rushing to their gates, but Bradley seemed more frantic than anyone else. He was pushing my wheelchair with an urgency that felt unnecessary. I could walk fine, perhaps a bit slowly due to my arthritis, but Bradley had insisted on the wheelchair. He said it would get us through security faster. Now looking back, I realize it was just another layer of the performance. A frail old man in a wheelchair looks helpless. He looks like a victim. He looks like someone who wouldn't notice if you slipped a package into the lining of his suitcase. "Dad, stop looking around. We are going to miss the boarding call," Bradley snapped, wiping sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand. I looked up at him. It was 65 degrees in the terminal, the air conditioning blasting at full power, yet my son was sweating as if he were running a marathon. His eyes were darting left and right, scanning the crowd, scanning the security guards, scanning everything but me. "I am just enjoying the scenery, son," I said, trying to sound cheerful. "We have plenty of time. The flight does not board for another hour." "We do not have plenty of time," he muttered, his knuckles white as he gripped the handles of the wheelchair. "The lines are long. Monica said the security is tighter these days. We need to go now." Monica, my daughter-in-law. Even here, miles away from her, her presence hovered over us like a dark cloud. Monica was a woman of expensive tastes and sharp words. She had never liked me, and the feeling was mutual. But I had tolerated her for Bradley's sake. I assumed she was back at my house, probably rearranging the furniture the moment I left, or perhaps hosting one of her loud brunch parties. I did not know that she was the architect of the nightmare I was about to walk into. We reached the TSA checkpoint. The line was moving sluggishly, Bradley was tapping his foot incessantly, a nervous tic he had developed as a child whenever he lied about his homework. I reached for my carry-on bag, but he snatched it away. "I have got it, Dad," he said, his voice too loud, too shrill. "You just sit there. Do not touch anything. You know you get confused with the bins and the shoes." I frowned. I did not get confused. I was grieving, not senile, but I let it go. I didn't want to argue. I just wanted this trip to be peaceful. I wanted to sit on a beach with my son and drink iced tea and talk about his mother. I wanted to believe that the man sweating profusely beside me was doing this out of love. Next, a TSA agent barked. Bradley pushed me forward. He hoisted my large suitcase onto the belt. It looked heavy, heavier than I remembered packing. I had only packed light summer clothes, a few books, and my toiletries. Why did it strain his biceps to lift it? "Go through the scanner," Dad, Bradley urged, giving me a gentle shove towards the metal detector. "I will meet you on the other side." I stood up, my knees popping slightly, and walked towards the scanner. That was when I saw him. Officer Rivera. He wasn't standing behind the glass screens with the other agents. He was standing off to the side, his arms crossed, watching the line. Watching us. Our eyes met for a fraction of a second, and I saw a flash of recognition. Do I know him? I wondered. But before I could process the thought, he was moving. As I stepped through the scanner, the alarm didn't go off, but Rivera stepped in front of me, blocking my path. "Sir, step aside," he said loudly. His voice commanded attention. People in the line behind me stopped removing their shoes to watch. I don't understand," I stammered. "I don't have anything metal." I said, "Step aside." Rivera repeated, his hand reaching for his belt. "We need to conduct a secondary search." Bradley's voice piped up from behind the barrier. "Is there a problem, officer?" "My father is elderly. He doesn't stay back, sir," Rivera shouted at Bradley, his hand hovering over his taser. Then he grabbed me. He spun me around, roughly pushing my chest against the cold wall of the inspection area. My heart hammered against my ribs. I felt the blood drain from my face. I had never broken a law in my life. I was a man of rules, a man of order. What was happening? This was the moment. The moment the whisper changed everything. As Rivera pulled my arms behind my back to cuff me, he leaned in close. His lips brushed my ear. The aggression in his voice vanished, replaced by a desperate, hushed urgency. "Pretend I am arresting you," he whispered. "Don't fight me. Scream if you want, act scared, but do not resist. Your life depends on it." I froze. The cold steel of the handcuffs clicked around my wrists. "Officer, please!" I shouted, my voice trembling, partly from acting, but mostly from genuine confusion. "What have I done? I am just going on vacation." "You are under arrest for suspicion of trafficking illegal narcotics," Rivera announced loudly for the benefit of the crowd. The word narcotics hung in the air like a toxic gas. The murmurs of the crowd turned into gasps. I turned my head, desperate to make eye contact with my son. I needed him to scream. I needed him to call a lawyer. I needed him to fight for me. I needed him to be the son I raised. I found Bradley in the crowd. He wasn't screaming. He wasn't fighting. He wasn't even looking at the agents. He was looking at his phone. And then I saw it. The image that would burn itself into my retinas and haunt my nightmares for the rest of my life. Bradley looked up from his screen. He saw his father handcuffed, being accused of a felony. He saw the old man who paid for his wedding, his car, and his debts being dragged away. And he smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was a smile of relief, a smirk of victory. It was the smile of a man who had just won a bet. He gave a small, almost imperceptible nod to himself, then turned his back on me and started walking away. He didn't even ask where they were taking me. He just walked away. That smirk hurt more than the death of my wife. That smirk was a knife twisting in my gut. Rivera marched me through a side door away from the prying eyes of the public. We walked down a long, sterile concrete corridor. The deeper we went into the bowels of the airport, the quieter it got. My mind was racing. Was this officer insane? Was he part of the plot? Or was he my savior? We entered a small, windowless interrogation room. A metal table, 2 chairs, a mirror that I knew was two-way glass. Rivera closed the door and locked it. Immediately, he unlocked my handcuffs. "You can sit down, Mr. Patton," he said, his voice normalizing. He pulled out a chair for me. He looked tired. He looked like a man who had seen too much evil in his line of work. "Who are you?" I asked, rubbing my wrists. "And why did my son just leave me?" "My name is Agent Rivera. I work with Homeland Security Investigations, but today I am saving you from disappearing," he said. He reached into a folder on the table and tossed 2 pieces of paper in front of me. I looked down. They were printouts of airline tickets. "This is your ticket," Rivera said, pointing to the first one. "Look at the destination." I squinted at the paper. Flight 402. Destination Tijuana, Mexico. "Tijuana?" I asked, confused. "No, that is wrong. We are going to Cabo San Lucas. We have reservations at the Grand Velas Resort." Rivera shook his head slowly. "There are no reservations, Gerald." I checked. "And look at the return date." I scanned the paper. "Return date N/A." "One way," I whispered. My throat felt dry. "Exactly," Rivera said. "Now look at the second paper. This is your son's ticket." I looked. Bradley Patton. Flight 402. Destination Tijuana. Return flight 8:00 p.m. tonight. He is coming back tonight. I asked the pieces of the puzzle floating in my mind, but refusing to click together because the picture they formed was too horrific to accept. "He was never going to stay with you," Rivera said brutally. "He was going to fly you down there, take you across the border, into a lawless zone, and leave you. Or worse. Or worse," Rivera walked to the corner of the room and picked up a clear plastic evidence bag. Inside was a brick of white powder. "We pulled this out of the lining of your suitcase before you even got to the counter. We have been watching your son for 3 weeks, Mr. Patton. He bought this from a street dealer in South Chicago." "My God," I gasped. "Cocaine. He was going to plant drugs on me." Rivera chuckled humorlessly. "No. That is the insult to the injury. It is sugar, powdered sugar mixed with baking soda." I stared at the white brick. "Sugar. If it were real cocaine, you would be facing federal prison here," Rivera explained. "But sugar in Mexico. If you were caught with this at the Tijuana border, the Mexican authorities would detain you. They would throw you in a holding cell while they tested it. That process can take weeks, sometimes months, if you don't have a lawyer or money to bribe someone. You would be a 70-year-old gringo with no Spanish, no phone, and no family rotting in a crowded cell. And by the time they realized it was sugar and let you go, you would be on the streets with nothing. You would be a missing person. A ghost." I sat back in the chair, the cold metal pressing against my spine. The room spun. My son. My Bradley. He didn't just want to kill me. Murder is messy. Murder leaves evidence. He wanted to erase me. He wanted to discard me like a bag of trash in a foreign country where nobody knew my name. Why, I asked, my voice cracking. Why would he do this? I give him everything. I pay his mortgage. I pay for Monica's car. Because you are worth more dead than alive, but you take too long to die, Rivera said. He pulled out a tablet and tapped the screen. We monitored a call between Bradley and his wife yesterday. Do you want to hear it? I didn't. I really didn't. But the auditor in me, the man who had spent 40 years hunting for the truth, nodded. Rivera pressed play. The sound was crisp. It was recorded from inside a car. Did you pack the package? That was Monica's voice, sharp, impatient. Yeah, it's in the lining. He won't find it. He's so out of it these days he barely notices what day it is. Bradley's voice replied. He sounded arrogant, dismissive. Good. Make sure you drop him off past the checkpoint. Once he is in the Mexican system, he is gone. I already talked to the insurance agent. The accidental death and dismemberment policy kicks in if he goes missing during a trip and isn't found for 60 days. $2 million, Brad. $2 million. I know, babe. I know. Just imagine. No more Sunday dinners with him. No more listening to his boring stories about the old days. And the house. We can finally sell that mausoleum and get the penthouse downtown. Just don't chicken out, Brad. Drop him. Leave him. Come home. Champagne is on ice. The recording ended. Silence filled the room. A heavy, suffocating silence. I looked at my hands. They were trembling. Not from fear anymore. From rage. For the last 6 months I had thought I was a burden. I thought I was a sad old man dragging them down with my grief. I had apologized to them for crying. I had thanked them for spending time with me. I was not a father to them. I was an asset. A depreciating asset that they decided to liquidate. They thought I was weak. They thought I was senile. They thought I was a mausoleum of boring stories. They forgot who I was. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. I inhaled the sterile air of the interrogation room and exhaled the grief. I exhaled the pity. I exhaled the father who loved unconditionally. When I opened my eyes, the tears were gone. My hands stopped shaking. I sat up straight. The slump in my shoulders disappeared. I looked at Agent Rivera, and for the first time he didn't see a victim. He saw the senior risk auditor who had brought down 3 corrupt CEOs and uncovered a $50 million embezzlement scheme in 1998. Rivera. I said, my voice steady and cold as ice. Yes, Gerald, you said you have been watching him. That means you haven't arrested him yet. Why, Rivera nodded, impressed by the shift in my tone. Because conspiracy to commit a crime is hard to prove without the act. If we arrested him now, he would claim the sugar was a prank. He would claim the one-way ticket was a mistake. He would get a lawyer, and he would walk away with a slap on the wrist. We need him to believe he succeeded. We need him to take the next step. We need him to try to claim the money. I looked at the one-way ticket on the table. I reached out and picked it up. I smoothed out the creases. You want to catch him for insurance fraud? I stated. That is the only way to put him away for a long time, Rivera agreed. But we need your help. We need you to stay missing. We need you to die, Gerald. At least on paper. I stood up. My arthritis pain seemed to vanish, replaced by a surge of adrenaline. I don't just want him in prison, Agent Rivera, I said. Prison is too good for them. They wanted to take my life, fine. I will give it to them. But first, I am going to take theirs apart piece by piece. I want to audit them. I looked at the laptop sitting on Rivera's desk. Can I use that? I asked. Rivera hesitated, then nodded. What are you going to do? I walked over to the computer. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I knew Bradley's passwords. I knew Monica's security questions. I had set up their trust funds. I had co-signed their loans. I knew where every single financial skeleton in their closet was buried, because I was the one who paid for the closet. I am going to check the books, I said, a dark smile touching my lips. If they think I am dead, they will get careless. They will start spending money they don't have. They will start moving assets. And I will be watching every single transaction. Rivera smiled. Welcome to the team, Mr. Patton. I typed in the password to my bank account. Access granted. I saw the balance, and then I saw the pending transaction. Scheduled for tomorrow. A transfer of $50,000 from my emergency savings to an account named M&B Holdings. They weren't even waiting for my body to get cold. They were looting the ship while the captain was still overboard. I canceled the transfer. Then I changed the password. "Let the games begin," I whispered. Rivera handed me a burner phone. "You can't go home. You can't call your friends." To the world, Gerald Patton got on a plane and vanished in Mexico. "You are a ghost now." I took the phone. I didn't feel like a ghost. I felt more alive than I had in years. "Where are you taking me?" I asked. "We have a safe house near the city. You will have internet food and a front row seat to your own funeral," Rivera said. "Good," I said. "I hope they order the expensive flowers. It's the last thing I will ever pay for." As we walked out of the room, I didn't look back at the airport terminal. I didn't look for my son. The boy I raised was dead. He died the moment he smirked at my arrest. The man walking out of that room was not a father. He was an auditor. And the audit had just begun. Agent Rivera placed a black burner phone on the metal table between us. The device looked innocuous, a cheap piece of plastic you could buy at any convenience store, but in that moment, it felt like the heaviest object in the world. It was the detonator to my former life. Rivera nodded at me, a silent signal that the recording equipment was rolling. I took a deep breath, closing my eyes for a second, to summon every ounce of frailty and confusion I possessed. I needed to bury Gerald Patton, the sharp-minded risk auditor, and become Gerald, the terrified, senile old man my son believed he had abandoned. My fingers trembled as I dialed Bradley's number. I did not have to fake the tremor. The adrenaline coursing through my veins was a toxic mix of rage and heartbreak. I pressed the speaker button so Rivera could hear every word. The phone rang once, twice. Usually Bradley would let it go to voicemail. He always claimed he was too busy with meetings or investments, which I later learned were just code words for gambling or sleeping in. But today he answered on the third ring. He was expecting this call. He was waiting for the confirmation that his plan had worked. Dad Bradley's voice filled the small interrogation room. It sounded steady, alarmingly calm for a man who had just left his father at a security checkpoint. "Dad, where are you? I have been looking everywhere for you. I am in the car circling the terminal." The lie was instant. He wasn't circling the terminal. I knew he was already on the highway, speeding away from his crime. "Bradley!" I screamed, forcing my voice to crack and rise an octave. I gripped the phone with both hands, leaning into the performance. They arrested me. They put me in a room. They said there are drugs in my bag. I waited for the shock. I waited for the outrage. I waited for him to demand to speak to a supervisor, to scream that it was a mistake, to threaten to sue the entire airport. That is what a son does. That is what I would have done for him. Instead, there was a pause that lasted only 2 seconds, but felt like a lifetime. "Okay, Dad, just calm down," Bradley said. His tone was not one of panic. It was the soothing, condescending tone one uses with a toddler who has scraped their knee. "You need to listen to me very carefully." "Are you listening?" "Yes." "I am listening," sobbed, looking at Rivera, who was scribbling notes on his pad. "They showed me a bag of white powder, Bradley. I swear I did not pack it." "You packed the bag. You have to tell them no." "Dad." Bradley's voice sharpened, cutting me off instantly. "Do not say that. Do not say I packed the bag. If you drag me into this, they will freeze my assets too, and then I won't have any money to get you a lawyer. Do you understand? You have to keep me out of it so I can save you." The logic was absurd. It was the logic of a con artist. But I played along. I whimpered into the receiver. Okay. I won't say anything. But I am scared, son. They are talking about prison. They are talking about Mexico." "I know, Dad." "I know it is scary," Bradley said, and for a split second he almost sounded convincing. "But I am handling it. I am calling our lawyer right now. I am going to get the best legal team in Chicago. We will sort this out." You are calling Mr. Henderson, I asked, naming my longtime attorney. Yes, I am calling Henderson immediately. Bradley lied. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. Mr. Henderson had died 3 years ago. Bradley had been at the funeral. He had even made a joke about how long the service was. He wasn't calling a lawyer. He was stalling. He was trying to keep me quiet and compliant until the system swallowed me whole. Dad, just sit tight, Bradley continued. Don't sign anything, but don't fight them. If they want to deport you or move you, just go. The lawyer will meet you wherever they take you. Just go with the flow. Trust me. Trust me. The words tasted like ash in my mouth. And then it happened. The audio on the call was clear, perhaps because he had me on Bluetooth in his car. In the background, beneath the hum of the engine, I heard a sound that shattered the last remnant of my denial. It was a giggle, high-pitched and malicious. It was Monica. Is he crying? I heard her whisper. Her voice was faint but unmistakable. Shh, Bradley hissed away from the phone before returning his attention to me. Dad, I have to go now. I need to keep the line free for the lawyers. Wait, I cried out, desperate to keep him on the line, desperate to hear more evidence of his betrayal. Bradley, please don't hang up. I don't want to be alone. You are not alone, Dad. I am with you in spirit, he said, reciting a line he probably heard in a movie. Then I heard another sound. It was distinct. It was a sound I had heard at 100 corporate galas and a dozen anniversary parties. Pop. It was the sound of a cork flying out of a champagne bottle. Whoops, watch the leather seats. Monica laughed in the background. My blood ran cold. They were not frantically calling lawyers. They were not speeding back to the airport. They were popping champagne. They were celebrating. I was sitting in a police interrogation room facing a potential life sentence or death in a foreign land, and my son and his wife were having a party in their car. Dad, are you there? Bradley asked, sounding impatient now. I looked at Rivera. His face was grim. He had heard it too. He gave me a sharp nod. It was time to end the scene. I am here, Bradley, I said. My voice dropped the frantic pitch. It became quieter, more resigned. I sounded like a man who had given up. I understand. I will do what you say. I will wait for the lawyer. Good. Bradley said, the relief evident in his voice. You are doing the right thing. Just be a good boy and wait. I love you, Dad. The words hung in the air, toxic and false. I know, I whispered. I pressed the red button on the burner phone. The call ended. The connection was severed. For a long moment, the only sound in the room was the hum of the ventilation system. I stared at the black phone in my hand, fighting the urge to smash it against the wall. Rivera reached out and gently took the phone from my grip. We have it all, he said softly. The advice to not resist, the lie about the lawyer, and the celebration. It goes to state of mind. It proves premeditation and malice. I stood up slowly. My knees didn't pop this time. The weakness I had feigned for the call had evaporated, burned away by the white-hot heat of the truth. I walked over to the mirror, looking at my reflection. I saw an old man, yes, but I didn't see a victim anymore. I saw a man who had just been given a second chance at life and a first chance at justice. They are drinking champagne, I said, my voice flat and devoid of emotion. Rivera nodded. It seems so. Champagne, I repeated. My wife, his mother, has been dead for 6 months. He didn't cry at her funeral. But he is drinking champagne because he thinks he just buried his father. I turned to face Rivera. The tears were gone. My eyes were dry. I want to see the accounts, I said. Now. Rivera gestured to the open laptop on the desk. It is all set up. We are routing your connection through a secure proxy. They won't know you are logging in. I sat down at the computer. My hands hovered over the keyboard. I felt the familiar comfort of the keys. This was my domain. This was my battlefield. Bradley might have known how to lie, how to manipulate, and how to spend money, but he did not know how to hide from numbers. Numbers do not have emotions. Numbers do not have loyalty. Numbers only tell the truth. I typed in my username. I typed in my password. The screen loaded. I navigated to the joint investment portfolio, the one I had set up for Bradley's future children, the grandchildren I would never have. The balance was 0. I blinked. I refreshed the page. 0. He had liquidated it. All of it. $500,000 gone. I checked the transaction history. The withdrawal had happened yesterday. The destination account was an offshore shell company in the Cayman Islands. He didn't just want the insurance money, I muttered, my eyes scanning the data streams. He has been stealing from me for months. I clicked on the credit card statements. The supplementary card I gave Monica for groceries and household emergencies. Prada, Gucci, the Four Seasons Hotel, a jewelry store in downtown Chicago. $10,000 for a diamond tennis bracelet, purchased 3 days ago. I laughed. It was a dry, hollow sound. She bought herself a diamond bracelet with my money to wear to my funeral, I said. Rivera leaned over my shoulder, looking at the screen. We can trace that offshore account, he said. It will take time, but we can do it. No, I said, my fingers flying across the keys now. We don't need to trace it yet. We need to let them feel safe. We need them to think they have won. I opened a new window. I accessed the main family trust. This was the big one. The one that held the deed to the house, my retirement savings, and the bulk of the estate. It was worth millions, and because I was technically alive, I still had administrator privileges. Bradley thinks he is the king of the castle now, I said, my voice dropping to a whisper. He thinks the old man is gone and the vault is open. I looked at the Edit Beneficiary tab. Currently, it listed Bradley Patton as the sole beneficiary in the event of my death. I clicked Edit. I deleted his name. I didn't replace it with another name yet. I just left it blank. A void, just like the void he had left in my heart. Then I went to the notifications settings. I set up a silent alert. Every time $1 was spent from any of my remaining active accounts, I would get a ping on the burner phone. I stood up and looked at Rivera. I am ready for the safe house, I said. Rivera packed up the laptop. You did good, Gerald. Most people would have broken down. I buttoned my jacket. I adjusted my collar. I broke down a long time ago, Agent Rivera, I said. I broke down when I realized my son was a monster. What you see now is just the machine that is going to dismantle him. We walked out of the interrogation room. The airport was still bustling with life. People were hugging their loved ones, saying goodbye, promising to call. I watched them with a strange detachment. They were living in a world of soft emotions and comfortable lies. I was stepping into the cold, hard world of facts. As we walked to the unmarked car waiting at the curb, my burner phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. A text notification from the bank. Transaction alert, $450. The Liquor Barn, champagne and caviar. I stared at the screen. Drink up, son, I whispered to the cold wind. Enjoy the bubbles, because the hangover is going to be hell. The safe house Agent Rivera brought me to was a small, nondescript apartment in the suburbs, the kind of place you drive past 1,000 times without ever noticing. It smelled of stale air and lemon cleaner, a sterile purgatory for a man who was supposed to be dead. Rivera offered me coffee, but I refused. I did not need caffeine. My nervous system was already vibrating, with a frequency I hadn't felt since my days auditing high-risk corporate mergers in the 80s. It was the hum of the hunt. I sat at the cheap laminate desk in the corner and opened my laptop. It was an old Dell, heavy and battered, the only item I had fought to keep. when Rivera pulled me out of the line. Bradley had tried to convince me to leave it behind. He said, "Dad, you don't need work on vacation, just relax." Now I knew why. This machine was not just a computer. It was the only witness to the crimes he thought he had buried. I cracked my knuckles, a habit Eleanor used to hate, and logged into the secure banking portal. The screen glowed blue in the dim room, casting long shadows across my face. For the past 3 years, ever since my eyesight started to fail and grief began to cloud my judgment, I had given Bradley limited power of attorney. It was supposed to be for convenience. He could pay the utility bills, manage the gardeners, and handle the medical expenses for Eleanor's treatments. I trusted him. I trusted the boy who used to cry when he accidentally stepped on a snail. I was such a fool. In my profession, we have a saying: trust is not an internal control. Trust is a vulnerability. I navigated to the property records first. The house, our home. The colonial estate on Elm Street where I had raised him, where Eleanor had planted her hydrangeas, where we had marked his height on the kitchen doorframe. It was fully paid off. I had burned the mortgage papers 20 years ago in the fireplace, celebrating with a bottle of scotch. It was my sanctuary, my legacy, the one tangible thing planned to leave him when my time actually came. I clicked on the liens and liabilities tab. My breath hitched in my throat. There it was, a red line on a pristine white spreadsheet. Mortgage loan. Originator Shadow Creek Lenders. Amount $500,000. Date 2 days ago. I stared at the date, blinking rapidly, hoping it was a glitch. 2 days ago. While I was packing my suitcase, worrying about whether I had enough sunscreen, Bradley was signing my home away. He had forged my electronic signature. I traced the IP address of the transaction. It came from his smartphone. He had probably done it while sitting across from me at the dinner table eating the pot roast I had cooked for him. $500,000. Where did it go? I followed the digital breadcrumbs. The money was deposited into the joint account, and within an hour it was wired out. 40% went to a cryptocurrency exchange, untraceable and volatile. 30% went to pay off a massive credit card debt under Monica's maiden name. And the rest? The rest sat in a holding account, waiting. Waiting for what? I felt a wave of nausea, but I pushed it down. An auditor does not vomit. An auditor digs deeper. I moved to the insurance portal. This was the terrifying part. I had a standard life insurance policy, of course. Nothing extravagant, just enough to cover taxes and funeral costs. But as I scrolled through the active policies linked to my Social Security number, a new file caught my eye. It was flagged as pending activation. Policy type: accidental death and dismemberment. High-risk travel writer. Face value $2 million. I clicked on the details, my hand shaking so hard I could barely control the mouse. The policy was specific, terrifyingly specific. It paid out double indemnity if the death occurred on foreign soil or during public transit. It covered mysterious disappearance if the body was not recovered within 60 days. It was a bounty, a price tag on my head. And then I saw the beneficiary. It wasn't Bradley. It was Monica, my daughter-in-law. The woman who never called me Dad, only Gerald. The woman who rolled her eyes when I talked about history. The woman who had just bought a diamond bracelet with my money. I sat back, the leather chair creaking under my weight. The logic of it was cold and perfect. If Bradley was the beneficiary, it might look suspicious. A son inheriting millions after his father vanishes in Mexico. That raises eyebrows. But a daughter-in-law, it provides a layer of separation. And if I knew Monica, she had probably convinced Bradley that this was for tax purposes or to protect the money from his gambling debts. She was playing him just as much as they were playing me. I looked at the purchase date of the policy. It was bought the same afternoon Bradley suggested the trip to Mexico. A healing trip, he had said. Just you and me, Dad. Bonding. It wasn't a trip. It was a transaction. The plane ticket cost $400. The fake drugs in my bag cost maybe $50. The return on investment, $2.5 million plus the equity in the house. To them, I wasn't a human being. I wasn't a father. I was a distressed asset, and they were liquidating me. I closed my eyes and saw the timeline clearly in my mind. Step 1. Mortgage the house to get immediate cash for their debts and lifestyle. Step 2. Insure the asset for maximum value. Step 3. Transport the asset to a high-risk jurisdiction, Mexico. Step 4. Plant the fake drugs to ensure the asset is detained or dumped in a lawless environment. Step 5. Wait 60 days. Step 6. Cash the check. It was brilliant. Evil, but brilliant. If I had been a regular old man, confused and scared, it would have worked. I would be rotting in a Tijuana holding cell right now, unable to speak the language while they drank champagne in my living room. But they forgot one thing. They forgot that before I was a generic old man, I was the head of risk assessment for the Midwest region. I spent 40 years destroying people who thought they were smarter than the system. I opened a new document on the laptop. I named it the Counter Audit. I started typing. I listed the mortgage. I listed the insurance policy. I listed the wire transfers. I was building a case file, not for the police, not yet, but for myself. I needed to see the full scope of the rot. As I typed, a notification popped up on the screen. It was an email from the security system at my house. Front door unlocked via smart key. User Monica. They were there. Right now. Inside the house they had just mortgaged. I pulled up the live camera feed. The video loaded grainy but clear enough. I saw Monica walking into my foyer. She was wearing white, looking angelic. She was carrying a stack of fabric swatches. She held them up against the wallpaper Eleanor had chosen by hand. Monica shook her head, pulled the wallpaper, and ripped a strip off the wall. "Trash," I heard her say through the camera's microphone. "Burn it all." Bradley walked into the frame behind her holding a bottle of wine. "Baby, are you sure we should start renovating so soon? What if someone notices?" "Who is going to notice, Brad?" Monica laughed, her voice echoing in the empty hall. "Your dad is probably crying in a cell right now or wandering the streets. He is gone. This is our house. My house." I watched them. I watched my son kiss the woman who had planned my disposal. I watched them toast to my demise in the home I built with 40 years of hard work. A strange calm settled over me. The anger didn't leave, but it crystallized. It became cold and hard like a diamond. I minimized the camera window. I went back to the banking portal. "Rivera," I called out, my voice steady. The agent stepped into the room. "What did you find, Gerald?" I turned the laptop screen toward him. "I found the motive: $2 million in life insurance and a $500,000 mortgage fraud." Rivera whistled low. "That is enough to put them away for 20 years. "Not yet," I said. "Prison is too easy. In prison, they get 3 meals a day. They get a roof over their heads. I don't want them to just go to jail. I want them to feel what I felt at that airport. I want them to feel helpless. I want them to feel poor." "What are you going to do?" Rivera asked. I looked at the bank transfer screen. The mortgage money, the $500,000, was sitting in that holding account, waiting to be distributed to their various debts. It was still pending. "I am going to freeze the assets," I said, "but not in a way they will notice. I am going to redirect the flow." "You can't steal it back, Gerald. That is illegal," Rivera warned. "I am not stealing," I corrected him. "I am the primary account holder. I am simply reallocating my portfolio." My fingers flew across the keys. I didn't cancel the transfer. That would alert them. Instead, I changed the destination. I routed the funds into a dormant escrow account I used for charitable giving, a secure locked box that required my biometric signature to open. Click. The money vanished from their view. On their end, it would look like a banking delay, a processing error. "Tomorrow morning," I said, staring at the screen. "Monica is going to try to pay off her credit card, and the card is going to be declined. Bradley is going to try to pay his bookie, and the check is going to bounce." I leaned back, watching the cursor blink. "They think they are millionaires tonight," I whispered. "But tomorrow they are going to wake up in a house they don't own, with money they can't touch, waiting for an insurance check that will never come." I looked at the camera feed again. Monica was spinning in circles in the living room, laughing. "Keep dancing, darling," I said to the screen. "The music is about to stop." I sat in the glow of the monitor, the digital evidence of my family's betrayal reflecting in my glasses. The initial shock had faded, replaced by a cold, hard clarity. For 40 years, I had assessed risk for a living. I knew that when a liability became too great, you did not ignore it. You eliminated it. My son and his wife were no longer family. They were a liability. They were a toxic asset that needed to be written off the books. Agent Rivera handed me a bottle of water. He looked concerned. He probably expected me to crack, to weep, to ask for a phone, to call a psychiatrist. But I was done crying. Gerald Rivera said softly, "We have enough here to arrest them for attempted kidnapping and fraud. We can go to the house right now. We can end this." I shook my head slowly. "No. An arrest is too clean. If you arrest them now, they will play the victim. They will say they made a mistake. They will say they were desperate. They will hire expensive lawyers using the equity they stole from my house. They might even get a plea deal." "Then what do you want to do?" Rivera asked. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the empty parking lot of the safe house. "I want a full audit," I said. "I want them to believe they succeeded. I want them to taste the victory. I want them to spend the money. I want them to feel the high of being millionaires. And then when they are at the very peak of their arrogance, I want to pull the rug out from under them. I want to destroy them completely." Rivera crossed his arms. "You are talking about a sting operation. A long con." I turned to face him. "I am talking about Justice Agent Rivera. They wanted me to disappear in Mexico. Fine. Let's give them what they want. Let's make Gerald Patton disappear." Rivera studied me for a long moment. He saw the resolve in my eyes. He saw that I was not a fragile old man anymore. I was a man with nothing left to lose. "Okay," Rivera said, a small smile playing on his lips. "If we do this, we do it by the book. We make it an official investigation into insurance fraud. We need to create a narrative that fits their story." He pulled out his phone and dialed a number. "We are going to initiate Protocol Ghost," he said into the phone. "Subject is Gerald Patton. Status is missing in transit. Coordinate with the Tijuana consulate. We need a paper trail." Over the next hour, I watched Rivera and his team construct my death. It was a fascinating and terrifying process. They created a digital footprint that suggested I had boarded a bus in San Isidro. They created a police report from the Mexican authorities stating that an elderly American man matching my description had been seen wandering near the border, confused and disoriented. They even planted a false lead about a hospital admission in Rosarito. It was a masterpiece of fiction to the world. I was a lost, senile old man who had wandered off into the desert. "Now comes the hard part," Rivera said. "We have to tell the family." He put the phone on speaker again. My heart hammered against my ribs, not from fear, but from anticipation. This was the first move in the game. Bradley answered on the first ring. "Mr. Patton, this is Officer Hernandez from the Border Liaison Unit," Rivera said, affecting a slight accent. "Yes, is there news? Did he land?" Bradley asked. His voice was tight, anxious. "There has been a complication, Mr. Patton. Your father was denied entry due to the substances found in his luggage. The Mexican authorities took him into custody for processing." I heard Bradley exhale, a long, shaky breath. Oh God. Is he in jail? That is the problem, sir, Rivera continued smoothly. During the transfer to the detention center, there was a clerical error. Your father was separated from the group. He is missing Mr. Patton. We believe he may have wandered into the city. We are conducting a search, but given his age and the area, Rivera let the sentence hang in the air. Missing Bradley repeated. The word did not sound like a question. It sounded like a prayer answered. Yes, sir. We are doing everything we can, but you should prepare yourself for the worst. The border is a dangerous place at night. There was silence on the other end. I could almost hear the gears turning in Bradley's head. He wasn't thinking about his father alone in the dark. He was thinking about the insurance policy. Mysterious disappearance. That was the clause. That was the jackpot. Do I need to come down there? Bradley asked. It was a token offer. He knew he wouldn't go. It would be best if you stayed by the phone in Chicago, Rivera advised. We will update you as soon as we find anything. Or a body. Okay. Okay, I will stay here. Please, officer, find him. Bradley's voice broke. It was a perfect performance. If I hadn't known better, I would have believed him. Rivera hung up. He didn't ask if you had your medication, Rivera noted grimly. He didn't ask if you had money or water. He asked if he needed to come down there because he wanted to make sure he didn't have to identify a body yet, I said. He needs me missing for 60 days to get the full payout. If I am found dead tomorrow, he gets less. He needs the mystery. I walked back to the laptop. Let's give him a mystery, I said. Rivera had set me up in a small bedroom at the back of the safe house. It was sparse, a single bed, a dresser, and a desk. It was a far cry from the master suite I had shared with Eleanor for 30 years, but it felt safer. Here the walls did not whisper memories of a son who used to love me. I unpacked the few things I had. My laptop, a photo of Eleanor I kept in my wallet, and the watch she had given me for our 40th anniversary. I sat on the edge of the bed and opened the laptop again. Rivera had told me to rest, but my mind was racing. I couldn't sleep. I needed to act. I needed to remind them that even though I was gone, I was still watching. I logged into the smart home system of my house. The cameras showed the living room. It was dark now. Bradley and Monica had gone to bed, probably exhausted from the excitement of their crime. The house was silent, but a smart house is never truly asleep. I navigated to the environmental controls. The thermostat was set to a comfortable 72 degrees. I clicked the arrow. 60 degrees. 55. 50. I confirmed the change. In a few hours, the house would grow cold. A chill would settle into the bones of the building. They would wake up shivering, pulling the blankets tighter, wondering why the furnace had failed. It was a small thing. Petty, perhaps. But it was a message. The warmth of that house came from me. I paid the bills. I maintained the furnace. I kept the cold world at bay. Now that I was gone, the cold was coming in. I moved to the security system. I disabled the chime for the front door. The little beep that sounded whenever a door was opened. Why? Because paranoia is a powerful weapon. If the door doesn't beep, they will never be quite sure if it is closed. They will wake up in the middle of the night convinced they heard a noise. They will check the locks. They will stare out into the darkness. I wanted them to feel unsafe in the sanctuary they had stolen. I checked the logs one last time. Bradley had already sent an email to the insurance company. Subject inquiry regarding claim process for missing persons. Sent 11:45 p.m., 15 minutes after Rivera hung up. He hadn't even waited until morning. I took a screenshot of the email. Evidence number 42. I closed the laptop and lay down on the hard mattress. I stared at the ceiling. I missed Eleanor. I missed the life I thought I had. I missed the illusion of a family. But as I closed my eyes, I didn't see darkness. I saw a chessboard. The pawns had moved. The knights were in position. My son thought he was the king. He thought he had cleared the board. He didn't realize that the game had just started, and he was playing against a grandmaster. Sleep well, Bradley. I whispered into the darkness. Because tomorrow the ghosts start walking. I fell asleep to the imaginary sound of a thermostat clicking off in a house 20 miles away and the temperature beginning to drop degree by degree, just like the love in my heart. It took less than 24 hours for the vultures to circle. Actually, that is an insult to vultures. Vultures wait until the heart stops beating before they pick the bones clean. My son and his wife did not even wait for the official missing persons report to be filed. They descended upon my house with the efficiency of a demolition crew. I sat in the safe house, the glow of the laptop screen illuminating the darkness of the room. Agent Rivera had offered to turn the feed off. He said it would be too painful to watch. He said no man should have to witness his own erasure. But I refused. I needed to see this. I needed to burn every single frame of their greed into my memory, so that when the time came to drop the hammer, I would not hesitate. I would not feel a flicker of mercy. The camera in the driveway picked them up first. A large rental truck backed up right onto the lawn. They did not care about the grass I had spent 20 years manicuring. They drove the heavy tires right over the flower beds Eleanor had planted the spring before she died. I watched the crushing of the petunias pixel by pixel. It was a small act of destruction, but it set the tone for what was to come. Bradley jumped out of the driver's seat. He was wearing jeans and a t-shirt looking nothing like a grieving son whose father was lost in a dangerous foreign country. He looked energized. He looked like a man who had just won the lottery. He high-fived Monica as she stepped out of her car. She was wearing sunglasses and holding a clipboard. She looked like a general surveying conquered territory. "This is it, babe," I heard Bradley say through the outdoor microphone. "The castle is ours." I leaned closer to the screen. My hands were clenched so tight my knuckles were white. The castle. That is what he called the home where I bandaged his scraped knees, the home where I taught him to do his taxes. It was just a piece of real estate to him, a pile of bricks to be conquered. They entered the front door. I switched the feed to the living room camera. This was a high-definition lens hidden inside the motion detector. I could see the sweat on Bradley's upper lip. I could see the gleam of avarice in Monica's eyes. "God, it smells like old people in here," Monica complained instantly. She wrinkled her nose as she walked into the foyer. "Open the windows, Brad. We need to air out the stench of failure." Failure. I had a net worth of $5 million and a reputation that commanded respect across the industry. But to her, the smell of hard work and modesty was the smell of failure. Bradley laughed. He actually laughed. "Yeah, it is pretty dusty. Dad never really cleaned after Mom died." That was a lie. I kept that house pristine. I kept it exactly the way Eleanor liked it, because it felt like she was still there. Monica walked into the center of the living room and spun around, her arms wide. "Okay, let's get to work," she commanded. "Everything goes. I want this place staged and ready for the market by next month. Or maybe we keep it. I haven't decided. But either way, this furniture is hideous. Look at this sofa. It is depressing." She kicked the leg of the Chesterfield sofa. The sofa where I had held Eleanor while she watched her favorite soap operas. The sofa where Bradley had slept when he had the chicken pox. "It is vintage," Monica Bradley said weakly. "Dad said it was hand-stitched leather." "It is trash," Monica snapped. "It is bulky and it takes up too much space. I want a sectional, Italian leather, cream-colored, something that says we have arrived." Bradley didn't argue. He never argued with her. He just nodded. "Okay. I will call the haulers." "No," Monica said. Don't pay for haulers, just put it on the curb, someone will take it. Or chop it up for firewood. Just get it out of my sight. I watched as my son, the boy I raised to respect property and history, dragged the sofa across the hardwood floor. I heard the screech of the wooden legs scratching the varnish. He didn't lift it. He dragged it. He was scarring the house, wounding it. But the furniture was just things. Wood and leather can be replaced. What happened next was the moment my heart turned to stone. Monica walked over to the fireplace. The mantelpiece was the heart of our home. It was where we kept the memories. There were framed photos of our wedding day, photos of Bradley's graduation, and in the center a large, beautiful portrait of Eleanor taken just a year before she got sick. She was smiling, that warm, gentle smile that could light up a room. Next to it was her favorite ceramic vase, the one she bought in Italy on our honeymoon. Monica stood in front of the shrine. She picked up the photo of Eleanor. She didn't look at it with respect. She looked at it like she was inspecting a piece of spoiled fruit. God, she was always watching. Wasn't she? Monica muttered. Even from the grave she has those judgmental eyes. Don't, Mon, Bradley said from the doorway. He sounded uncomfortable, but he didn't move to stop her. That is Mom. She never liked me, Brad, Monica said, tapping her manicured nail against the glass of the frame. She always thought I was a gold digger. She told you not to marry me. Remember, I remembered. Eleanor had seen through Monica the moment they met. She had warned Bradley. She loves your wallet, not your soul, Eleanor had said. Bradley had stormed out and didn't speak to us for a month. Well, look who is standing in her living room now, Monica sneered at the photo. Who won, Eleanor? Who won? Then she did the unthinkable. She didn't place the photo down. She didn't put it in a box. She dropped it. She simply opened her hand and let the frame fall. It hit the brick hearth with a sickening crunch. The glass shattered. The frame cracked. Oops, Monica said, her voice dripping with fake innocence. Butterfingers. Bradley flinched. He looked at the shattered portrait of his mother. For a second, just a split second, I saw a flash of the boy he used to be. I saw the pain. I waited for him to yell. I waited for him to tell her to get out. I waited for him to defend the woman who gave him life. But he didn't. He looked at Monica. He saw the cold challenge in her eyes. He knew that if he fought her, he would lose the access to the money, the lifestyle, the illusion of power she granted him. So he swallowed his soul. It is okay, babe, Bradley said softly. It was an accident. We can just sweep it up. Get a trash bag, Monica ordered, turning her back on the wreckage. Get a big one. All of this junk goes. The vase, too. It is tacky. I watched as my son went to the kitchen and returned with a black, heavy-duty trash bag. He knelt down in front of the fireplace. He picked up the shards of glass. He picked up the torn photograph of his mother's smiling face, and he threw it in the bag. He swept the ceramic vase, the Italian keepsake, into the same bag. He cleared the mantelpiece until it was bare, until there was no evidence that Eleanor or Gerald Patton had ever lived there. This room feels bigger already, Monica said, admiring the empty space. We can put a 60-inch flat screen up there. Maybe a modern art piece. Something abstract. I sat in the safe house, silence ringing in my ears. I wasn't crying. I wasn't shaking. I was completely, terrifyingly still. Agent Rivera walked in. He looked at the screen, then at me. He saw the black void on the mantelpiece where my life used to be. Gerald, he said softly, you don't have to watch this. Yes, I do, I replied. My voice sounded strange to my own ears. It was deep, resonant, and hollow. Why, Rivera asked. Because I need to know exactly what the bill is, I said. I am an auditor, Agent Rivera. I never send an invoice until I have accounted for every single loss. I pointed at the screen where Monica was now measuring the curtains for replacement. They broke the glass, I said. They trashed the photos. They scratched the floors. I looked at Rivera. They think they are renovating a home they inherited. They don't realize they are vandalizing a crime scene. And every single thing they touch, every item they throw away, is just adding years to their sentence. I typed a note into my digital log. Item portrait of Eleanor Patton. Value priceless. Status destroyed by Monica Patton. Witnessed by Bradley Patton. Action unforgivable. I closed the laptop lid. The image of the black trash bag swallowing my wife's smile vanished, but the image in my mind was permanent. Let them have their night, I told Rivera. Let them sleep in the master bedroom. Let them think they have won. Tomorrow the accounts start to freeze. Tomorrow the credit cards stop working. Tomorrow the heating goes off. But tonight, let them sit in the empty room and celebrate, because it is the last peaceful night they will ever have. The ghost is not in Mexico. The ghost is in the machine, and he is coming for them. 3 days. That is how long it took for Agent Rivera to make the call that would officially end my life. I sat in the darkened room of the safe house, the hum of the hard drive, the only sound keeping me company. On the screen, the live feed from my living room showed Bradley pacing back and forth. He was holding his phone, checking it every 30 seconds. He wasn't waiting for news of my safety. He was waiting for the news that would release the funds. Rivera sat next to me and put the phone on speaker. He cleared his throat, shifting into the character of the weary border liaison officer. Mr. Patton, Rivera said, his voice heavy with fabricated sorrow. Bradley stopped pacing. He froze in the middle of the Persian rug he had already listed for sale on an auction site. Yes, is there news? I am so sorry, Rivera said. We found him. Or rather, the authorities in Tijuana found him. Your father suffered a massive cardiac event in the holding cell. The medical examiner said it was quick. He is gone, Mr. Patton. I watched my son's face on the high-definition monitor. I watched for the grief. I watched for the denial. I watched for the knees to buckle, for the hands to cover the face, for the guttural cry of a child who has lost his parent. But Bradley didn't fall. He didn't cry. He closed his eyes and exhaled. It was a long, slow breath. His shoulders dropped. The tension that had been coiling inside him for days simply evaporated. Dead Bradley asked just to be sure. Confirmed, yes, sir. We are processing the paperwork now. We will need to arrange for the transport of the remains, but it will take time due to the legal issues with the contraband found in his luggage. I understand, Bradley said. His voice was steady, almost businesslike. Do whatever you have to do, I will. I will tell the family. He hung up. The moment the line went dead, Bradley didn't scream. He didn't call his wife. He walked over to the sidebar, poured himself 3 fingers of my expensive scotch, and held the glass up to the light. Free, he whispered. I felt a cold hand squeeze my heart. He wasn't mourning me. He was toasting his freedom from me. But the private celebration was short-lived. Bradley was a creature of the modern age, and he knew that grief, like everything else, was a commodity. It needed to be performed. It needed to be monetized. I watched as he set the stage. He went to the hallway and grabbed a framed photo of us, one of the few Monica hadn't thrown in the trash yet. It was from a fishing trip we took 10 years ago. He placed it carefully on the coffee table. Then he set up a ring light. A ring light. He adjusted the angle of his phone. He messed up his hair to look disheveled. He rubbed his eyes vigorously until they were red and puffy. He is going to broadcast this, Rivera, said disbelief coloring his tone. I said nothing. I just watched. Bradley hit the Go Live button on Facebook. I pulled up the stream on my laptop. Within seconds, the viewer count jumped. Friends, relatives, former colleagues of mine, they all tuned in expecting an update on the search. Bradley stared into the camera, his bottom lip trembling. It was an Oscar-worthy performance. Guys, he choked out, a fake tear sliding down his cheek. I have the worst news possible. My dad, my hero, he didn't make it. The comments section exploded with broken heart emojis and prayers. They say it was a heart attack, Bradley continued, sniffing loudly. He died alone in a cell in Mexico. He was confused. He was scared. And I wasn't there to hold his hand. I read the comments. So sorry for your loss, Brad. He was a great man. Stay strong. They didn't know they were watching a predator play with his food. And then came the pitch. The pivot that made my stomach turn. Bringing him home is going to be expensive, Bradley said, wiping his nose on his sleeve. The legal fees, the transport, the funeral. It is overwhelming. I know times are tough for everyone, but if you can find it in your heart to help us bring Gerald home, I have set up a donation link below. Anything helps. Please, help me bring my dad home. I stared at the screen. He had a $2 million insurance policy pending. He had just mortgaged my house for $500,000. He had liquidated my savings. And yet he was begging my friends, my neighbors, people on fixed incomes to give him $20 here, $50 there. He wasn't just greedy. He was a bottomless pit. Within 10 minutes, the donation counter hit $3,000. $3,000 from people who actually loved me, going straight into the pocket of the man who killed me. The front door opened. Monica walked in. She was carrying garment bags from a high-end boutique. She saw Bradley in front of the ring light and froze. Bradley made a cut motion across his neck and ended the live stream. How much did we get? Monica asked. She didn't ask about me. She asked about the money. $4,000 so far, Bradley said, his voice instantly returning to normal. Plus the sympathy factor is through the roof. This will help when the insurance adjusters come sniffing around. No one suspects the grieving son. Monica nodded, satisfied. She threw the garment bags onto the sofa, my new sofa, or rather the space where my old sofa used to be. I had to go to 3 different stores, she complained, kicking off her heels. Do you know how hard it is to find a black dress that doesn't make me look like a corpse? I am the corpse, Monica, I whispered to the screen. Not you. She unzipped one of the bags and pulled out a sleek, backless cocktail dress. It was inappropriate for a nightclub, let alone a memorial service. This one cuts too low, she said, holding it up against her body in the mirror. And the fabric is itchy. Black just washes me out, Brad. It makes my skin look gray. I need to look tragic, not ugly. There will be press there, right? We can invite the local paper, Bradley agreed. The more coverage, the better. It solidifies the timeline. I am thinking of wearing a veil, Monica mused. A lace veil. It adds a touch of mystery. And it hides the fact that I am not crying. She tossed the dress aside and picked up her phone. We need to order the food for the wake, she said. I am not making tuna casseroles, Brad. I want this to be an event. She dialed a number. It was a luxury catering company in downtown Chicago. I knew them. They catered the company holiday parties. Their minimum charge was $10,000. Hi, this is Monica Patton, she said, her voice dripping with faux sweetness. Yes, unfortunately, we are planning a memorial. It was very sudden. We need full service for Saturday. She paused, listening to the menu options. No chicken. That is too pedestrian. Let's do the lobster sliders and the filet mignon bites. Oh, and the champagne tower. Yes, the Moet. Champagne tower. For a funeral. Rivera looked at me. He looked sick. How are they paying for this? I checked my banking alerts. Transaction pending Elite Catering Services. Amount $12,500. Card ending in 4490. My card. The American Express. Black card I kept for emergencies. They are putting it on my tab, I said, my voice flat. They are throwing a party to celebrate my death, and they are making me pay for the lobster. Monica hung up the phone looking pleased. They can fit us in, she announced. It is going to be fabulous, Brad. Everyone who is anyone will be there. We need to make sure the house looks ready. Did you call the cleaning crew? Yeah. They are coming tomorrow, Bradley said. He walked over to her and wrapped his arms around her waist. We did it Monday. We actually did it. He is gone. The money is coming. The house is ours. We are finally free. Monica kissed him. It wasn't a kiss of love. It was a kiss of complicity. I kept thinking he would wake up, she whispered. I kept thinking the old bat would figure it out. But he was dumber than I thought. I closed the laptop. I sat in the silence of the safe house. I thought about the lobster sliders. I thought about the black dress that washed out her complexion. I thought about the fake tears and the donation link. They called me dumb. They called me a burden. They called me a cash cow. But they forgot the first rule of auditing. You never close the file until the final penny is accounted for. I stood up and walked to the closet. I pulled out the suit Rivera had brought me. It was a charcoal gray suit, sharp-tailored, the kind of suit I used to wear to board meetings when I had to fire an executive for embezzlement. Rivera, I said. Yeah, Gerald. Get the car ready for Saturday, I said. You are going to the funeral, Rivera asked. I smoothed the lapel of the suit. I wouldn't miss it for the world, I said. After all I paid for the catering, it would be a shame to let all that lobster go to waste. And besides, I added a cold smile touching my lips. Monica is worried about black washing her out. Wait until she sees how she looks in orange prison jumpsuits. I hear that color is very unforgiving. I looked at the blank wall, imagining it was the face of my son. Keep the donations, Bradley, I whispered. You are going to need every penny for the commissary. The doorbell rang at exactly 10 in the morning. Leonard Vance was never late. In the 40 years I had known him through market crashes, corporate mergers, and the funeral of my wife, Leonard, had never been a minute early or a minute late. He was a man of precision, a shark in a three-piece suit, who viewed the law not as a moral compass, but as a set of mechanical gears to be mastered. I sat in the safe house, leaning forward, my eyes glued to the laptop screen. This was the moment I had been waiting for. This was the stress test. I watched through the camera lens hidden in the bookshelf of my study. Bradley had insisted on meeting there. He thought sitting in my leather chair behind my mahogany desk would give him authority. He looked like a child playing dress-up in his father's clothes. The chair swallowed him. He kept adjusting his tie, wiping his palms on his trousers. Monica sat opposite him, perched on the edge of the guest chair, like a vulture, waiting for a carcass to stop twitching. Leonard walked into the room. He didn't offer a handshake. He didn't offer condolences. He simply placed his leather briefcase on the desk, clicked the gold latches open, and sat down. Mr. Patton, Mrs. Patton, Leonard said, his voice dry as parchment. I was informed of the tragic news regarding Gerald. As the executor of his estate, I am here to facilitate the transition. However, I must admit I am surprised to be called so soon. Usually families wait until a body is recovered. We just want closure, Leonard Bradley said quickly. Too quickly. The uncertainty is killing us. We need to settle his affairs so we can grieve properly. Monica nodded vigorously. Yes. Gerald would not have wanted us to live in limbo. He was a practical man. Leonard stared at them over the rim of his spectacles. He knew exactly where I was. He knew I was watching. We had rehearsed this scenario over the phone the night before. But seeing him in the room with them, seeing the predator face down the parasites, gave me a grim satisfaction. I have the copy of Gerald's last will and testament right here, Leonard said, reaching into his briefcase. It was drafted 5 years ago. It divides the estate evenly between his son Bradley and several charitable organizations with a stipend for the maintenance of the family home. Bradley's face went pale. He hadn't expected the charities. He hadn't expected the stipend. He wanted the lump sum. Actually, Leonard Bradley interrupted, his voice cracking slightly. That will is outdated. Dad wrote a new one. I watched Leonard pause. He froze, his hand hovering over the file. A new one, Leonard asked. I was not informed of any changes. I have been Gerald's attorney for decades. He did it last week. Monica interjected, her voice sharp. Just before the trip, he said he had a premonition. He said he wanted to make sure we were taken care of. He didn't want to bother you with the paperwork until he got back. Bradley reached into the desk drawer, my desk drawer, and pulled out a crisp white envelope. He slid it across the mahogany surface. Here it is, Bradley said. I zoomed in on the camera feed. My heart hammered against my ribs. I knew they were greedy, but I didn't think they were this stupid. Forging a will is a felony. Presenting it to an officer of the court is a guaranteed ticket to prison. Leonard picked up the document. He put on his reading glasses. The room fell silent. The only sound was the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall. I watched Leonard's eyes scan the paper. I could imagine what he was seeing. A rushed document probably printed from an online template. Legalese that sounded impressive but meant nothing. And at the bottom, the signature. I saw Leonard's eyebrow twitch. Just a fraction of a millimeter. I knew my signature better than anyone. It was complex, a series of loops and sharp angles I had developed to prevent fraud. Bradley had tried to copy it, I was sure. But a signature is like a fingerprint. You can fake the shape, but you can't fake the pressure, the flow, the hesitation. This is interesting, Leonard said slowly. He looked up at Bradley. You say he signed this last week, yes, Bradley said. Tuesday night. Right here in this room. Leonard looked back at the paper. And the witnesses, Leonard asked. A will requires 2 impartial witnesses. Monica smiled. It was a tight, practiced smile. 2 of our friends. They were here for dinner. They signed it. Their contact info is on the back. I checked the names on the back of the document through the camera zoom. Kyle Jenkins and Sarah Miller. I knew them. They were Bradley's drinking buddies. They would sign a death warrant for a case of beer. Leonard slowly folded the document. He took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. He was playing them perfectly. He was making them sweat. The terms are quite distinct, Leonard said. In this version, Gerald revokes all charitable donations. He leaves the house, the savings, the stocks, and the insurance payout entirely to... He paused. To Monica Patton, he finished. Bradley flinched. Even he knew how bad it looked. To me, Monica acted surprised, placing a hand over her chest. Oh, Gerald. He always told me I was the daughter he never had. He must have known Bradley is bad with money. He wanted me to manage it for us. I laughed in the safe house, a cold, bitter laugh. I had never told her she was a daughter. I had told her she spent money like a drunken sailor. Leonard looked at Monica. His eyes were cold. Entirely to you, he repeated, and it effectively disinherits his own son, making him dependent on your goodwill. That is how Dad wanted it, Bradley said, his voice low. He trusted Monica. Leonard sat back in his chair. He tapped the forged will against the desk. Well, Leonard said, his voice dropping to a serious, confidential whisper. If this is his signature, and if these witnesses hold up, then this document supersedes the previous one. I saw the relief wash over them. Bradley slumped back in the chair. Monica squeezed his hand. They thought they had cleared the hurdle. They thought the lawyer was just a bureaucrat, accepting the paperwork. But Leonard wasn't done. He was just baiting the hook. However, Leonard added, raising a finger. There is a significant complication regarding the execution of these assets, specifically the insurance policy and the bank accounts. What complication? Monica snapped, her aggression returning instantly. The complication of the body, Leonard said. Or rather, the lack of one. He leaned forward, lacing his fingers together. In the state of Illinois, and under the terms of the insurance rider, a missing person cannot be declared legally dead for 7 years unless there is overwhelming evidence or a court decree. Without a body, the insurance company will freeze the payout. The bank will lock the accounts. You will be sitting on this inheritance, unable to touch a penny until the year 2031. 7 years, Bradley shouted. We can't wait 7 years. We have expenses now. Leonard nodded sympathetically. I understand. But the law is the law unless... Leonard let the word hang in the air. Unless what Monica demanded. Unless we can expedite the judicial decree of death, Leonard said. I have a contact at the probate court. We can push for an emergency ruling, but the judge will need to see absolute conviction from the family. He will need to see that you have accepted the death beyond a shadow of a doubt. What does that mean? Bradley asked. It means you need to perform the rituals of death, Leonard explained. To get the money released within 30 days, you must hold a public memorial service, a funeral without a body. You must invite the community, the business partners, the press. You must stand up in front of everyone and declare under oath and before God that Gerald Patton is dead and that you have ceased looking for him. Leonard paused, letting the trap set. If you do that, and if you present this memorial service as evidence to the judge, I can get the insurance company to release the $2 million immediately. It is a psychological play, you see. It shows the court you are not holding out hope. I watched their faces. I saw the greed wrestling with the fear. A public memorial meant standing on a stage and lying to hundreds of people. It meant doubling down on their crime. But then I saw Monica's eyes glaze over. She wasn't thinking about the lie. She was thinking about the $2 million. We can do that, Monica said. We are already planning a service for Saturday. Saturday, Leonard raised an eyebrow. That is perfect. I will prepare the legal motions. But remember, this service must be convincing. If the judge senses any hesitation, any doubt that he might still be alive in Mexico, the money stays frozen. You have to sell it. We will sell it, Bradley promised. I will give a eulogy that will make stones weep. Leonard stood up. He picked up the forged will. I will take this into evidence, he said. I need to file it with the court immediately to start the process. He put the forgery in his briefcase. He had the smoking gun. One more thing, Leonard said, pausing at the door. Since the accounts are currently flagged due to the suspicious nature of the disappearance, you might find your access to credit limited for a few days. The bank is very cautious about identity theft when a client goes missing. That explains why the card was declined. Monica muttered. Don't worry, Leonard assured them. Once the memorial is over and the judge signs the order, the floodgates will open. You will be richer than you ever imagined. He walked out. I watched Bradley and Monica alone in the room. We did it, Bradley exhaled. We fooled Leonard. He is an old fool, Monica scoffed. He didn't even check the date properly. 7 years. Can you believe that? Thank God we have the funeral planned. She looked at the empty desk. We need to make Saturday spectacular, Brad. I want more flowers. I want a string quartet. If we have to convince a judge, let's make it the performance of a lifetime. I leaned back in my chair at the safe house. They were right about one thing. It was going to be the performance of a lifetime. Leonard texted me a moment later. Got the document. It is a clumsy forgery. Ink is still fresh. They are committed, Gerald. Saturday is the end game. I typed back. Saturday is Judgment Day. I looked at the screen one last time. Bradley was opening my humidor, reaching for one of my vintage cigars. He lit it, puffing smoke into the air of my study. "Enjoy it, son," I said. "Because when I walk through those doors on Saturday, the only thing you will be smoking is the ashes of your future." I closed the laptop. The trap was sprung. The bait was taken. Now all I had to do was wait for the funeral. My funeral. The one where I would rise from the dead and bury them. The black sedan pulled up to the curb of the Eternal Rest funeral home just as the clock struck 2. From behind the tinted glass of the back seat, I watched the procession of cars filling the parking lot. It was an impressive turnout. There were luxury SUVs, sleek sports cars, and a fleet of town cars that I recognized from my days on the board of directors. Bradley and Monica had certainly done their job. They had marketed my death as the social event of the season. I adjusted the cuffs of my charcoal suit. It was the same suit I had worn to Eleanor's funeral 6 months ago. The irony was not lost on me. That day I had stood in the rain weeping for the love of my life. Today I was sitting in an air-conditioned federal vehicle, dry-eyed and cold, waiting to crash a party thrown by her murderers. Ready Agent Rivera asked from the driver's seat. He was not wearing his uniform today. He was dressed in a dark suit, posing as my private security detail. "I am ready," I said. "But let's wait. I want to hear the speech. I want to hear what my son has to say about the man he betrayed." We waited until the guests had filed inside. I saw my old golf partner crying into a handkerchief. I saw the barista from the coffee shop I visited every morning, looking genuinely sad. It hurt to see them grieving for a lie, but I reminded myself that their pain was temporary. The justice I was about to serve would be permanent. Then I saw the others. 3 men in ill-fitting suits stepped out of a black Range Rover. They didn't look like mourners. They looked like sharks. One of them had a scar running down his cheek and a bulge under his jacket that was definitely not a wallet. "Who are they?" Rivera asked, following my gaze. "Those are the investors," I said, my voice dripping with disdain. "That is Tony the Hammer. He runs a high-stakes poker game in the warehouse district. If he is here, it means Bradley owes him a lot more than just money. He owes him blood." Bradley had invited his loan sharks to his father's memorial. He was showing them the corpse of the cash cow, promising them that the payout was coming. It was despicable. It was reckless. It was perfect. "Let's go in," I said. We slipped into the back of the chapel just as the organ music swelled. The room was suffocating with the scent of white lilies. There were thousands of them arranged in massive, ostentatious arches. It smelled like a botanical garden rotting in the heat. I stayed in the shadows of the vestibule, hidden behind a marble pillar. Rivera stood next to me, his hand resting casually near his holster. From my vantage point, I could see everything. At the front of the room, there was no casket. Instead, there was a large easel holding a blown-up photograph of me. It was a terrible photo. It was taken years ago at a company barbecue where I had spilled mustard on my shirt. I looked disheveled and slightly confused. They had chosen it on purpose. They wanted to sell the narrative of the senile, incompetent old man. Monica sat in the front row. She was wearing the black lace veil she had talked about. From a distance, she looked the picture of the grieving widow. Her shoulders were shaking. To the audience, it looked like she was sobbing. I pulled out my phone and zoomed in with the camera. She wasn't sobbing. She was laughing. She was whispering something to the woman next to her and probably commenting on someone's shoes. And in her lap, hidden by her purse, was her phone. The screen was bright. She was on the banking app, refreshing the balance page over and over again. She was checking to see if the insurance company had made a mistake and released the funds early. She was checking to see if she was rich yet. Then the music faded. The room fell silent. Bradley walked up to the podium. He looked impeccable. He was wearing a black suit that cost more than my first car. His hair was perfectly styled. He gripped the sides of the podium, lowered his head for a moment of dramatic silence, and then looked up. His eyes were glistening. He had probably used eye drops backstage. "Thank you all for coming," Bradley began, his voice trembling just the right amount. "Seeing so many of you here, it reminds me of how many lives my father touched." He paused to wipe a tear. A ripple of sympathy went through the crowd. "My father, Gerald Patton, was a complicated man," Bradley continued. "To the world, he was a brilliant auditor, a man of numbers, a man of rules. But to me, he was just Dad." He smiled a sad, wistful smile. "But in his later years, Dad struggled. We tried to hide it. We tried to protect his dignity. But the grief of losing Mom broke something inside him. He started making bad choices. He started associating with the wrong people." I stiffened. Here it comes. The assassination of my character. He became secretive. Bradley lied smoothly. He started withdrawing large sums of cash. He started talking about escaping, about living on the edge. I tried to stop him. Monica tried to stop him. We begged him to get help. But he wouldn't listen. Bradley looked out at the audience, his eyes locking with Tony the Hammer in the back row. He gave the loan shark a barely perceptible nod. "When he insisted on this trip to Mexico, I went with him, because I was afraid," Bradley said. "And my fears were justified. I didn't know about the drugs. I didn't know he was trying to smuggle contraband across the border." A gasp went through the room. My friends looked at each other in shock. Gerald smuggling drugs. It seemed impossible, but Bradley sold it with such conviction. "I blame myself," Bradley choked out. "I should have checked his bags. I should have stopped him at the airport. But I was too late. The authorities found the substances. They detained him. And the stress, the shame of being caught. It was too much for his heart." He took a deep breath, gripping the microphone stand. "My father died in a foreign cell, alone and afraid because he lost his way. He wasn't a criminal. He was a victim of his own grief. And now all I can do is bring him home and try to repair the damage he left behind." He looked directly at the camera that was live streaming the event. "Dad, if you can hear me, I forgive you. I forgive you for the mistakes. I forgive you for the mess. I just want you to be at peace, Ma." The room erupted in murmurs of sympathy. Poor Bradley. Such a good son, forgiving a criminal father. I felt a hand on my shoulder. It was Rivera. He could feel the tension radiating off me. "Easy, Gerald," Rivera whispered. "Let him finish." I shook off his hand. I wasn't angry anymore. I was past anger. I was in a state of cold, absolute clarity. My son wasn't just killing me. He was burying my name in the mud so he could build his fortune on top of it. He was telling these people, my friends, my colleagues, that I was a drug mule. He was destroying 40 years of integrity in 5 minutes. Bradley stepped back from the podium, wiping his face. He looked exhausted, burdened. He looked like a martyr. Monica stood up and hugged him. It was a staged embrace, perfectly framed for the photographers. She whispered something in his ear. Through the parabolic microphone Rivera was using to record the event, I heard her words clearly in my earpiece. "You nailed it. Tony looks happy. We are clear." They separated. Bradley sat down, looking solemn. Monica sat down and immediately checked her watch. She was probably wondering how long until the catering started. She wanted the lobster. The minister, a man I had never met, walked up to the podium to give the closing prayer. "Please rise," the minister said. The room stood up. Chairs scraped against the floor. I stayed in the shadows. This was the moment. The judge needed to see conviction. The insurance company needed to see on a public declaration. The loan sharks needed to see a guarantee. They had all seen it. The trap was fully set. Rivera looked at me. He tapped his earpiece. The exits are secured, Rivera said. My team is in position. The doors are locked. Nobody leaves until we say so. I buttoned my jacket. I fixed my tie. I ran a hand through my hair. I stepped out from behind the pillar. I didn't walk down the center aisle immediately. I stood at the back just for a second, letting the scene imprint itself on my mind. The flowers, the fake tears, the champagne tower waiting in the lobby. It was a beautiful funeral. It really was. It was a shame I had to ruin it. I signaled to the sound technician in the booth. He was an undercover FBI agent we had planted earlier that morning. He cut the minister's microphone. The feedback squealed through the speakers, a sharp, piercing noise that made everyone cover their ears. The room went silent. Then the agent hit play on the projector screen. The photo of me with the mustard stain disappeared. In its place, a video started playing. It was the video from my living room time-stamped 3 days ago. It showed Monica throwing the photo of Eleanor into the fireplace. It showed Bradley sweeping the shards of glass into a trash bag. She was always watching, wasn't she? Even from the grave. Monica's voice boomed through the chapel speakers loud and clear. Just get it out of my sight. All this junk goes. The audience gasped. Confusion rippled through the pews. People turned around looking for the source of the video. Bradley and Monica froze in the front row. They stared at the screen, their faces draining of color. Then the video cut to the car ride. Did you pack the package? Yeah, it's in the lining. He won't find it. $2 million, Brad. $2 million. The murmurs turned into shouts. Tony the Hammer stood up, his eyes narrowing. He realized he wasn't getting paid. He realized he was being played. Bradley spun around, panic seizing him. Cut it! Cut the feed! Who is doing this? He looked frantic. He looked guilty. That is when I started walking. I walked down the center aisle, my footsteps heavy and rhythmic on the marble floor. I didn't shout. I didn't run. I walked with the slow, deliberate pace of a man who owns the building. The guests in the back rows saw me first. A woman screamed. It wasn't a scream of fear. It was a scream of disbelief. Gerald, someone whispered. I kept walking. The sea of black suits parted for me. People shrank back as if they were seeing a ghost, and in a way they were. I walked past my old golf partner. I walked past the barista. I walked past the loan sharks. I walked all the way to the front until I was standing 10 feet away from my son. Bradley turned around slowly. He looked like he was going to vomit. His knees gave way. He collapsed back into his chair, shaking his head. No, he whispered. No. You are dead. They said you were dead. Monica stood up. She dropped her phone. The veil slid off her hair. She pointed a trembling finger at me. It's a trick, she shrieked, her voice hysterical. It's a hologram. It's a deepfake. I stopped. I looked at the crowd. Then I looked at the microphone on the podium. I walked up the steps. I stood next to the minister, who looked like he was about to faint. I took the microphone. I looked down at my son. Hello, Bradley, I said. My voice echoed through the silent chapel. I pointed to the screen behind me where the video of them plotting my murder was still playing on a loop. You said I was confused. You said I made bad choices. I paused, letting the silence stretch until it was painful. You were right about one thing. I did make a bad choice. I looked him dead in the eye. My bad choice was trusting you. Bradley started to sob. Real sobs this time. The sobs of a man who knows his life is over. But I wasn't done. The funeral was just getting started, and I had one final eulogy to deliver. The silence in the chapel was absolute. It was not the silence of peace or prayer. It was the suffocating silence of a held breath, the kind that comes right before an explosion. I stood at the foot of the altar steps, looking up at the two people who had turned my life into a transaction. To them, I was a ghost. To them, I was a glitch in their matrix, a dead man walking who had the audacity to interrupt his own eulogy. Bradley was the first to break. His legs, which had held him upright while he lied to hundreds of people, simply gave up. He collapsed backward, hitting the floor of the stage with a heavy thud. He scrambled backward on his hands and heels, crab-walking away from me until his back hit the wooden podium. His face was a mask of pure, unadulterated terror. He wasn't looking at his father. He was looking at his reckoning. Monica was different. Her reaction wasn't fear. It was denial. A violent, shrill rejection of reality. She stood up, knocking her chair over. Her black lace veil was askew, revealing eyes that were wide and manic. "No," she screamed. Her voice cracked, echoing painfully off the vaulted ceiling. "No. This is a trick. He is dead. We got the email. We have the report." "Oh." She pointed a shaking finger at me, turning to the crowd. "Look, it is a hologram. It is a deep fake. Bradley, tell them he died in Mexico." I didn't say a word. I didn't have to. I just took one step up the stairs, then another. The sound of my leather shoes on the wood was the only answer she needed. Holograms don't make noise. Deepfakes don't cast shadows. I reached the podium. I looked down at my son, who was trembling so violently his teeth were chattering. He looked up at me, his eyes pleading, begging for this to be a nightmare he could wake up from. "Dad," he whispered. It was a small, broken sound. I didn't reach out a hand to help him up. I didn't offer a comforting smile. I reached past him and took the microphone from the stand. I held it firmly, feeling the cold metal mesh against my palm. I turned to face the audience. I saw the shock on their faces. I saw the confusion. But mostly, I saw the hunger for truth. I tapped the microphone twice. Thump, thump. The sound boomed through the speakers, proving that I was very, very real. "That was a beautiful speech, Bradley," I said. My voice was calm, steady, and amplified to every corner of the room. It had all the right words. Hero, victim, tragedy. You really sold it. I looked down at him again. "It is a shame about the ending, though," I continued. "You forgot the part where the hero survives." Bradley put his head in his hands and let out a guttural sob. Monica rushed forward, grabbing my arm. She actually grabbed me, her nails digging into my suit jacket. "You can't be here," she hissed, her voice dropping to a frantic whisper so the crowd wouldn't hear. "You are supposed to be in a ditch. We paid for the catering. You are ruining everything." I looked at her hand on my arm. I looked at her with the same detachment I would use to inspect a stain on a spreadsheet. "Get your hands off me, Monica," I said coldly into the microphone. "Or I will add assault to the list of charges." She recoiled as if burned. "Charges?" She laughed nervously, looking at the crowd. What is he talking about? Poor Gerald. The drugs must have fried his brain. He thinks he is the police. I smiled. It was a sharp, dangerous smile. "No, Monica. I am not the police, but I brought friends." I raised my hand and snapped my fingers. At the back of the room, the projection booth operator, my undercover ally, hit the enter key. The large screen behind me, which had been displaying the unflattering photo of me with the mustard stain, flickered. The image dissolved. A new video appeared. The audio was crisp. It was the recording from the car taken just 3 days ago. The audience watched in stunned silence as the screen showed Bradley driving and Monica in the passenger seat. "Did you pack the package?" Monica's voice boomed through the chapel. "Yeah, it's in the lining. He won't find it. He's so out of it these days." A collective gasp swept through the room like a wave. People covered their mouths. I saw my neighbor, Mrs. Higgins, clutch her chest. The video cut to the next clip. the living room, the fireplace, the sound of glass shattering. Just get it out of my sight. All of this junk goes. The vase, too. On screen, Bradley was sweeping the pieces of his mother's portrait into a trash bag. The crowd turned on them instantly. The sympathy evaporated, replaced by a palpable, heavy anger. But I wasn't done. The final clip played. It was the live stream from the night before. The one where Bradley cried about needing money to bring my body home. The video showed the moment the live stream ended. It showed Bradley wiping away the fake tears instantly. "How much did we get?" Monica asked on screen. $4,000 so far. Plus, the sympathy factor is through the roof. The screen went black. The silence in the room was gone. It was replaced by the sound of betrayal. Chairs scraped as people stood up. Voices rose in anger. "You lied to us," someone shouted from the back. "You tried to steal from us," another voice yelled. I looked at Tony the Hammer and his associates in the third row. They weren't shouting. They were staring at Bradley with a look that was far more dangerous than shouting. They were doing the math. They realized that the inheritance was a myth, and their debt was never going to be paid. Bradley saw them too. He shrank into a ball against the podium, realizing that prison might actually be the safest place for him now. Monica was shaking her head, backing away from me. "It's fake," she screamed again, desperate to salvage the narrative. "He edited it. He is jealous because we are young and happy." I stepped toward her. "You can fake a picture, Monica," I said, my voice cutting through her hysteria. "But you can't fake the timestamp on the bank transfer you tried to make 5 minutes ago while the minister was praying." I pulled my phone out of my pocket and held it up. Notification: Bank of America. Attempted transfer, $20,000. Status declined. Account frozen by owner. I looked at the crowd. She was checking her balance during my funeral, I announced. She was trying to move my money before my body was even cold. Or so she thought. Monica's face crumbled. The mask of the grieving daughter-in-law fell away, revealing the ugly, greedy child beneath. She looked at Bradley, her eyes full of venom. "Do something," she shrieked at him. "Fix this. You said he was stupid. You said he wouldn't notice." Bradley didn't answer. He couldn't. He was broken. "That is enough," a voice boomed from the side of the stage. The heavy velvet curtains parted. Agent Rivera stepped out. He was no longer the security guard. He was wearing his badge on his belt, and behind him were 4 uniformed officers and 2 agents from the fraud division. The sight of the badges sucked the air out of the room. This wasn't a family dispute anymore. This was the federal government. Bradley Patton Rivera said, his voice authoritative and loud. "Monica Patton!" Bradley tried to stand up, but his legs failed him again. 2 officers moved in, grabbing him by the arms and hoisting him to his feet. He hung between them like a rag doll. Monica tried to run. She actually turned and sprinted toward the side exit, but an officer was already there. He blocked her path. She slapped at his chest, screaming like a banshee. "Don't touch me. Do you know who I am? I am the victim here. He tricked us." The officer spun her around and pinned her hands behind her back. The sound of handcuffs ratcheting shut cut through her screams. Click, click, click. The same sound I had heard at the airport. The sound of freedom ending. Rivera walked to the center of the stage. He looked at the crowd, then at the prisoners. "You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, insurance, fraud, identity theft, and elder abuse," Rivera announced. "Murder." Monica screamed. "He is standing right there. He is alive. Attempted murder by abandonment in a foreign jurisdiction with intent to cause death." Rivera corrected her calmly. "And considering the amount of money involved, you are looking at 20 years. Minimum." Bradley looked at me. His eyes were red, swollen, and filled with a belated selfish regret. "Dad," he choked out. "Dad, please. Tell them. Tell them it was a mistake. I am your son. I looked at him. I looked at the boy I had taught to ride a bike. I looked at the man who had packed sugar in my suitcase and sent me to hell. I walked over to him. The officers held him back, but I signaled them to wait. I stood inches from his face. You are not my son, I said softly, so only he could hear. My son died the moment he smirked when the handcuffs went on my wrists at the airport. But Dad, he pleaded. No, I interrupted him. You wanted an inheritance, Bradley. You wanted a legacy. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a single folded piece of paper. It was the receipt for the funeral catering, the bill for the lobster and the champagne. I tucked it into the breast pocket of his expensive suit. Here is your inheritance, I said. You can pay this off working in the prison laundry. It should only take you about 5 years at 20 cents an hour. I stepped back. Get them out of my sight, I said to Rivera. The officers began to drag them away. Monica was still screaming, blaming Bradley, blaming me, blaming the world. Bradley was silent, his head hanging low, sobbing quietly. As they were marched down the center aisle, the same aisle they had walked down so triumphantly, just an hour ago, the crowd didn't part for them out of respect. They parted out of disgust. I watched them go. I watched them pass the flower arrangements they had bought with my stolen credit card. I watched them pass the friends they had lied to. I watched them disappear through the double doors of the chapel into the waiting police vans. The doors swung shut with a heavy final thud. The room was silent again. I stood alone on the stage. The video screen behind me had gone black. The memorial was over. I looked out at the sea of faces, my friends, my peers, the people who had come to say goodbye to Gerald Patton. I cleared my throat and raised the microphone one last time. I apologize for the interruption, I said, my voice steady, and I apologize for the quality of the entertainment. It seems the main act has been canceled. A few nervous chuckles rippled through the room. However, I continued, a small, genuine smile touching my lips for the first time in weeks. I believe there is a reception planned in the lobby. There are lobster sliders and very expensive champagne. I looked at Tony the Hammer in the back row. He gave me a nod of respect. He knew a power move when he saw one. Please enjoy the food, I said. It has already been paid for. And I would hate to see good lobster go to waste. I placed the microphone back on the stand. I didn't walk out the back way. I walked down the stairs and into the crowd. Hands reached out to touch me, to reassure themselves that I was real. I shook them. I accepted the hugs. But as I walked through the lobby past the champagne tower that Monica had ordered to celebrate my death, I didn't take a glass. I walked out the front doors of the funeral home and into the bright, blinding sunlight of the afternoon. The police vans were pulling away, sirens wailing in the distance. I watched them turn the corner and vanish. I took a deep breath. The air smelled of exhaust and pavement, but to me it smelled like freedom. My name is Gerald Patton. I am 70 years old. I have no wife. I have no son. I have a house full of broken furniture and an empty bank account that needs to be rebuilt. But as I stood there on the sidewalk, loosening my tie, I realized something. I had never been richer. I hailed a cab. Whereto the driver asked. Take me to the animal shelter, I said. The driver looked at me in the rearview mirror. The animal shelter, yes, I said, looking at the empty seat beside me. I have a big house and I think it is time I got a dog. Dogs are loyal. And they don't know how to sign insurance forms. The cab pulled away, leaving the funeral behind. The audit was complete. The books were balanced. And for the first time in a long time, the numbers looked good. As the officers moved in to secure the perimeter, the final illusion of their marriage evaporated. It was pathetic to watch. Monica, the woman who had spent months whispering poison into my son's ear, didn't look at him with concern. She looked at him with pure, unadulterated hatred. She realized the ship was sinking, and she was desperate to find a life raft, even if it meant drowning her husband to get it. It was him, she shrieked, her voice piercing the stunned silence of the chapel. She recoiled from Bradley as if he were diseased. He forced me to do it. I didn't know about the drugs. I didn't know about the insurance. I am a victim here. I am a victim of domestic coercion. The audacity was breathtaking. Even the police officers looked disgusted. Bradley didn't argue. He didn't scream back. He just looked at her. He looked at the woman he had destroyed his relationship with his father for. He looked at the woman he had mortgaged his future for. And in that moment, seeing her twist her face in ugly desperation to frame him, he finally understood the magnitude of his mistake. He had sold his soul for a partner who would trade him for a plea deal in a heartbeat. "Save it for the judge, lady," the officer muttered, tightening the cuffs around her wrists. I signaled to the back of the room. The double doors swung open. Outside the press pool I had notified an hour ago was waiting. I had promised them a scoop about a high-profile insurance fraud ring, and I never disappointed the press. As the police dragged Bradley and Monica out of the chapel, the cameras flashed like a lightning storm. They captured every second of it. Monica hiding her face, screaming at the cameramen to stop filming. Bradley hanging his head, weeping openly, the shame finally crushing him. They wanted to be famous. They wanted to be seen. Now they were on every news channel in Chicago. They were the stars of their own tragedy. Agent Rivera stood beside me as the sirens faded into the distance. The room was empty now, save for the few stunned guests who were whispering in the corners. "What about the assets?" Gerald Rivera asked quietly. "The accounts are unlocked now. The insurance investigation is officially closed. You have your liquidity back." I looked at the empty altar. I looked at the extravagant flower arrangements that were beginning to wilt in the heat. "I don't want it," I said, my voice steady. "That money is cursed. It smells like betrayal." I picked up the program for the memorial service. It had my face on the cover, printed on expensive cardstock. "Liquidate the insurance policy," I said. "Liquidate the trust. Take every single penny that Bradley thought he was going to inherit. Take the value of the house, too. I am selling it." "And what do you want to do with the funds?" Rivera asked. I looked at him. "Give it to the Silver Horizon Foundation," I instructed. "They are a legal defense fund for elderly people who have been abandoned or exploited by their families. Let my son's greed pay for someone else's salvation. Let the money he tried to steal from a father be used to protect other fathers." Rivera smiled. "That is poetic justice, Gerald." "It is not poetry, Agent Rivera," I said, turning to leave the funeral home for the last time. "It is just good accounting. I am balancing the books." I walked out into the sunlight. I had lost a son, but I had regained my dignity. And somewhere out there, a lonely old man or woman was going to get the help they needed because Bradley Patton wanted a new sofa. It was a price I was willing to let him pay. The air at O'Hare International Airport smells different when you are not being marched to your execution. It smells like possibility. It smells like freedom. 1 month ago, I was pushed through this terminal in a wheelchair, a victim of my own blind love. Today, I am walking through the first-class priority lane holding a glass of pre-flight champagne. I am not alone, but my entourage has changed. There is no son sweating nervously beside me. Instead, to my left is Leonard adjusting his Panama hat and complaining about the humidity. To my right is Rivera, who has finally traded his badge and tactical suit for a floral Hawaiian shirt that is loud enough to wake the dead. He is technically off-duty, but I think he is enjoying his new role as my unofficial bodyguard and travel companion. We are not going to Mexico. We are going to Maui. And we are not going on a budget. I decided to spend the inheritance my son tried to steal on the people who actually deserve it. For 70 years, I thought family was defined by DNA. I thought it was the people who sat at your dinner table and shared your last name. I was wrong. Blood is just biology. Family are the people who stand in the line of fire for you. Family are the people who hand you a burner phone when you are cornered. Family are the people who help you bury the lies so you can finally live the truth. I paused at the trash can near the gate. I pulled my old phone out of my pocket. It was the line Bradley used to call me. It was the line Monica used to manipulate me. It was a digital tether to a life that no longer existed. I popped the SIM card out. It was a tiny piece of plastic smaller than a fingernail, but it held so much weight. Rivera looked at me. You ready to go off the grid? Gerald, I looked at the SIM card one last time. Then I dropped it into the bin. I am not going off the grid, I said, smiling at my real family. I am just changing the frequency. I turned my back on the trash and walked onto the jet bridge. The plane was waiting. The ocean was waiting. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't auditing the past. I was investing in the future. If you believe that betrayal comes with a price and Gerald was right to make them pay it. Hit the like button and subscribe for more stories where justice is always served.